Hey everyone, I'm Alexis from Open, and very excited to chat with y'all about Squeeth. So Squeeth is a nice, funny word. You may not have heard of it before, but by the end of today, I promise you'll know exactly what a Squeeth is, and you can tell all your friends. So we're actually first going to start by talking a little bit about options, and then we'll get into Squeeth, why it exists, how it came to exist, and how it actually works. Okay, so why do people use options? People don't typically just use these instruments for the sake of using these instruments. They're trying to achieve something. And with options, people are usually looking to get leverage, earn yield, or be able to hedge themselves. And there are a couple different types of options. We've got call options and we've got put options. For today, I'm going to focus on call options, and I'm going to start by just talking about what a call option is. I know options get thrown around all the time, so let's start by making sure we all understand what they are. So I'm going to start with this kind of fancy definition, and then we'll break it down. So a call option is the right, but not the obligation, to buy an asset, which we call the underlying, at a given price, which we call the strike price, on a certain date, which is our expiry date. And that's a mouthful, but let's go through an example so we can fully understand what's going on here. So let's say that ETH price is $3,000 right now, and I'm feeling super bullish. I think at the end of February, ETH is going to be $5,000. I think we're going to have a massive bull run, and I'm very excited about it. So what can I do to monetize that view? Well, what I can actually do is buy this call option instrument. I can go out into the market and pay something called a premium in order to buy this call option. And remember how we talked about that thing called a strike price? Well, I expect that ETH is going to be $5,000 at the end of the month. So maybe I choose a strike price of something like $4,000. So what does that mean? That means at the very end of the month, if ETH is $5,000 and my strike price is $4,000, I can buy ETH at $4,000 using my call option, even though it's $5,000 on the market. So that lets me buy ETH cheaper than what it's actually trading at. So now, why would I do this instead of just buying ETH straight up right now? Why would I buy this call option instead? Well, remember how I paid a premium to get this call option? That premium could be something like, say, like $100. So what I'm doing is I'm spending $100 right now because I think at the end of the month, ETH is going to be $5,000, and my strike price is $4,000. So at the very end of the month, if my strike price is $4,000, I can use that call option to buy ETH at $4,000, sell it on the market for $5,000, and earn that payoff of $1,000, even though all I spent was $100 upfront for this premium. And so that's why people like to use call options instead of potentially, just buying ETH straight up. So yeah, if ETH price hits 4,000 or goes above 4,000 at the end of the month, I can still buy my ETH for $4,000, even though it's trading higher on the market. So going back to our definition, just to put all the pieces together, ETH is the underlying asset. That's what I'm buying my call option on. My strike price is $4,000. My expiration date is February 28th, the end of the month. And the critical part is that I have a choice. I can decide if I want to buy ETH for $4,000 at the end of the month. So if ETH's trading above 4,000, it's at $5,000, then I want to use this option to buy ETH cheaper at 4,000. But on the other side, say we have some sort of bear situation, ETH goes down to $1,000. Am I forced to buy ETH for $4,000? Answer is no. I have a choice. So I would only want to use this option if ETH goes above $4,000. And that choice, this right not obligation, is a really cool part of options. Because then if I've bought this call option, the maximum amount I can lose on it is that $100 that I paid for it. But I stand to gain more and more as ETH goes up in value. And so that payoff looks like this. This blue line here, this kind of flat line, is like my max I can lose. That's the premium that I paid. And then as ETH continues to go up, I continue to earn more because I can always buy ETH for $4,000, even if it's trading higher in the market. And so that gives us this really nice property of limited downside and unlimited upside. And we have a fancy word for this in derivatives land called convexity. So if you ever hear people saying convexity, now you know that it pretty much in its essence means limited downside and unlimited upside. And so that's a really nice property that you get by buying options. So now you might be thinking, okay, like this is awesome, like I want to buy an option and get convexity. Who in the world is going to be selling that to me? Who doesn't want limited downside and unlimited upside? And so now we can look at kind of the other side of the payoff, which is selling a call option. And the reason that people take this other side of the trade and sell call options is because they're earning that premium. That $100 that you spent, they get that. And so if someone thinks, hey, I don't actually think ETH is going to move that much, there's no way it's going to hit 4,000, then they might feel like this is a bet that they're willing to take to earn these kinds of steady premiums. And so that's kind of what the two sides of these option trades typically look like. On one side, someone is getting optionality. They have a choice, this right, not obligation. On the other side, people are earning premiums, and they are basically getting paid to take the other side of this trade. If ETH goes above $4,000 and someone uses their option, exercises their option, the person selling the option does not have a choice. They are forced to pay out, and so they are paid for taking that. Okay, so what are the problems with options? Why am I here talking about Squeeth? So there's a couple different problems that we've seen with DeFi options. The first is that these options have expiries. Like we talked about, I can only use it up until the end of the month. So I have to come and think about, hey, like, I think I expect ETH to go up by the end of this month, but what about in 4 weeks? And what about in 6 weeks? So that's a lot of thinking for me to do. And then to add to the amount of choices I have to make, I could also have multiple different strikes. I could think ETH is going to be above 4,000 or maybe 3,500 or 5,000. And so now I have all of these different combinations of strikes and expiries. And to make things even more difficult, all of these strike expiry combinations need to have their own liquidity pools. And so now I'm looking at tons and tons of liquidity pools. I have to form liquidity around all of these different series, and that gets pretty challenging. And so we were like, okay, how do we solve these problems with options? So we went to the forest. It was a bunch of the open team with Dan and Dave from Paradigm, and we were like, all right, how do we solve these problems? And then in the forest, in a nice sunny clearing, we found a Squeeth. And Squeeth solves these problems with options. Squeeth has no expiries, no strike price, and that lets us get this one liquidity pool. We only have to build liquidity around one asset. So Squeeth maintains this nice property of convexity that we talked about with options. You still have limited downside and unlimited upside, but you remove these problems that we talked about. So now let's look at Squeeth. Let's try to understand Squeeth a little bit better, and then kind of understand what you can do with Squeeth. So this blue line here is the Squeeth payoff. And you can see it looks kind of similar to a call option. It kind of goes like this, except it's more curvy than the call option we looked at before. So we still have this unlimited upside, and we have limited downside. But there are a couple different ways that we can think about Squeeth. So first, let's think about the name, Squeeth. So Squeeth actually stands for squared ETH. So ETH squared, ETH to the power of 2. And that's the blue line here. It's literally ETH squared, the x squared graph from like math class. It's just a parabola, the parabola that you're kind of used to. And so that gives us this nice kind of property of the unlimited upside and limited downside. And another way you can think about it is as perpetual leverage without liquidations. So the red line here is 2x leverage, and you can see that if ETH isn't moving that much, Squeeth and 2x leverage are performing about similar. But if ETH moves a lot in the upward direction, Squeeth does better than 2x leverage. And if ETH moves down a lot, you cap your kind of downside with Squeeth, whereas you get liquidated with 2x leverage. So that's a bit of a mental model about how long Squeeth works. You can think about it as like a perpetual call option. You can think about it as similar to 2x leverage, but better on the upside, better on the downside. And so that's kind of how you can think about long Squeeth. Now, again, you must be thinking, who in the world is going to take the short side of Squeeth? And okay, so before I get into that, another way to think about long Squeeth is kind of to compare it. And so, who in the world is going to take the short side? They have to get paid for that. And so with options, you pay a premium in order to get access to that option. So we got our premium. But with Squeeth, you pay funding. So funding similar to other instruments like perpetual swaps. So Squeeth is similar to a perpetual swap in that you're paying funding. It's similar to a call option in that you have convexity. So you can see that Squeeth and call option payoffs are both curvy, but when you're looking at 2x leverage or a perpetual swap, they're straight. Cool. So yeah, when you go to be short Squeeth, you're basically earning funding for taking on that position. And when you're short Squeeth, you're taking a similar kind of view as to selling a call option, where you're making the bet that ETH isn't going to move too much, and so you'd be able to just like sit there and earn funding. If ETH does move a lot, that's when you'd be looking at losses if you're going short Squeeth. And when you go short Squeeth, from a mechanism perspective, how does that work? Well, it's kind of similar to MakerDAO. You have a vault, you put down some ETH collateral, and then you mint some short Squeeth, and then you sell it. So you have to be thinking about things like your collateral amount, your collateralization ratio, your liquidation price. The short side of Squeeth does have liquidations. The long side does not. So that's kind of a lot to think about. And so in order to deal with that, we built this thing called the crab strategy. And the crab strategy lets you go short Squeeth in one click. You don't have to be thinking about the amount of collateral you're putting down. You don't have to think about your collateralization ratio. The strategy kind of automates that for you. And remember how I said that when you're going short Squeeth, you have to put down some ETH collateral? Well, short Squeeth aims to kind of hedge out that ETH price exposure. So what you're trying to do is just earn funding without taking into account kind of that ETH price exposure that you get when you're going short Squeeth. And so with Crab, you're trying to earn a return in US dollars versus earning a return in ETH. This is also called like a delta neutral kind of position for those that are familiar with the term. Okay, and there are actually some other fun ways that you can use Squeeth. Squeeth trades on Uniswap v3, and we just have one Squeeth pool. It's very nice. You don't have all these fragmented pools. And you can actually be a Uniswap LP and earn fees for that. And you actually get some cool payoffs for being a Uniswap LP. So for those familiar with Uniswap, when you're Uniswap LPing, you need to put 2 tokens into a pool. So for us, that's Squeeth and ETH. And there are a couple different ways that you can get Squeeth to put in the pool. Way number 1 is you can buy Squeeth from Uniswap. And then way number 2 is you can put down ETH collateral into a vault and mint some Squeeth. And so we can look at the payoffs for both situations. So when you're buying Squeeth and taking some ETH and LPing it on Uniswap v3, you actually get something really interesting. Your payoff is ETH to the 1.5x leverage. So this blue line is kind of your Uniswap buy and LP payoff, and the red line is 1.5x leverage. And you can see that it's kind of similar. It's basically like slightly less curvy Squeeth. If Squeeth is ETH squared, buying and LPing is ETH to the 1.5. So what you're doing is you're giving up some of your upside that you get from Squeeth in return for earning the trading fees on Uniswap. So that's what buying and LPing looks like. And then mint and LPing looks a little bit more like a long ETH kind of position. So you mint some Squeeth, You put it in the LP pool. You still have to be, thinking about your collateralization ratio and liquidation price, but you're able to earn trading fees while taking on this position that looks a little bit more like a long ETH position. There's also a lot of stuff that anyone can build with Squeeth. You can build different strategies like the crab strategy. You can build LP strategies, kind of like the ones we talked about. There's a couple fun things that I won't be able to get to today, but would love to chat about more later. You can actually use Squeeth to hedge like an ETH USD Uniswap LP. Squeeth can be used as a volatility oracle. There's lots and lots of fun stuff you can do with something like Squeeth. And if you want to chat about it more, you can find us on Discord at discord.open.co. You should totally try Squeeth out at squeeth.open.co. And then let me know how it goes. Like, DM me on Discord, Twitter DM me. We're always trying to improve the thing. So let me know how it goes. And then if you want to build Squeeth with us, we're also hiring at jobs.open.co. And I think we'll have a couple minutes for questions. But first, we have a little treat for everyone. And the title of this talk is called Squeeth with Me. So I encourage you all to Squeeth with me.
Thank you. Now we have time for a couple questions.
Oh, we have to. Yes!